Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Tonight, we talk about current events. We haven't done that this month, the month of June 2016, and it's a lot going on in the political world. We have Hillary versus Trump, and we have the Florida massacre, and we also have local criminal issues that our good friend Cindy George with the Houston Chronicle is going to talk to us about. And I also have Danny Sneed in the audience that's going to talk to us and give us his opinion. And of course, you're welcome to call in and give me yours. So Cindy, tell us a little bit about you and tell us what we need to know currently about Hillary and Trump. I haven't seen the news lately.
Oh, but that's a big job. Well, I'm a reporter at the Houston Chronicle. I'm a multimedia general assignment reporter, so I cover lots of different things. I don't always cover politics. However, you can hardly escape Secretary Clinton and Mr. Trump, regardless of what kind of journalist you are. Lately, in fact, today, Mr. Trump made a scripted policy speech.
Wow, and what did you think about that?
It appears to be a pivot in his effort to appear presidential. And it was also exceedingly critical of Hillary Clinton. And he got in some zingers, you know. I'm with her is her slogan, and he said, I'm with everyone else. I'm with you. So she also spoke today. They speak every day, it seems. And she is continuing to talk about the economy and her plan to help America bounce back from the stagnant wages and high unemployment and reshifting of the economy to a service industry, less manufacturing. And so she gave several points, I believe there were 5 points, about her vision for the economy going forward. So both of them are taking their places as the presumptive nominees of their party. We don't know what's going to happen later on this summer at the Republican and Democratic conventions. And of course, what they are doing at this point really matters, if not for any other reason than the Libertarian candidates are getting a bit of attention tonight. The presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate will be having a town hall on CNN, something I've never seen before. And the polls that CNN has reported are showing Mr. Johnson and Mr. Weld polling at 7 to 9%.
Wow.
In the general election. And so that certainly could shift the outcome.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting tonight that Trump had a scripted policy speech today.
Teleprompter.
That is very interesting in that he has never really cared about facts or policy. He's only cared about slander, disrespect, negativity, and I'm high off life. This is me, Trump. Look at me, world. I'm the best attitude. So I'm surprised that he's trying to look presidential.
Well, he actually stuck very closely to the written version of the speech. It was released in advance of the speech to the media, which is something clearly new. I would not say that he finished his speech without an avalanche of questions about accuracy. There are some Republicans who are concerned about his economic ideas. They are not at all in step with the party platform. However, there are some elements of his earlier campaign, the primary, that were completely missing from this speech. He didn't talk about building a wall. He's not talking about deporting. And so it's going to be very interesting to see if the people who latched on to his messages in that arena, and if they fade away, if they continue to be Trump supporters and continue to be fervently in favor of him, and if his crowds continue to be as robust as they have been.
Let me tell you what I find interesting. I heard in the middle of the night on radio that Trump has a very little amount of money going forward compared to Hillary is raising a lot more money than he is, and that at least $1 million, according to his campaign finance report, was spent coming back into his pocket or someone in his family's pocket for marketing, or maybe it was his campaign finance person's offshoot company.
First of all, Mr. Trump has said that he was self-financing in the primary, which was partially true. He loaned his campaign money, and so I would expect that he would want that money back. Secondly, there are some expenditures in the last few months that have been good for Trump's businesses and businesses of his associates. I will also say that this has been a campaign unlike anything that I have ever seen. And in my professional life, this is my 5th presidential campaign. I started in 2000 with Hanging Chads in Florida. And so I will say that given the propensity of this campaign to be unlike anything we've ever seen, I'm not sure that the disparity between Secretary Clinton's fundraising and Mr. Trump's fundraising will make a big difference at the end of the day. We just don't know. And with the media's fascination, it seems, with Mr. Trump and response to him, not the least of which has been the Washington Post being banned or having their press passes snatched, and their response is to make sure they have 20 people investigating him, reporting on him, writing about him. I'm not sure that you need as much campaign financial backing if you have that many people who are giving you free press, negative or positive.
I agree with you on that. I agree. Danny, do you have anything to comment on about the Trump-Hillary debate?
Yeah, what I've seen in this election years is it's got a lot of people engaged in the conversation about politics that normally didn't have an opinion or didn't care, and that's what I think Donald Trump is a positive in as far as a candidate. Now, as far as him actually being president, I'm like Hillary. I'm with her. I don't believe he has the right temperament or the knowledge of what the office really needs. I think probably has been great in business, but if you look at his business practices, one of the lines Hillary says, if you look at his book, it starts with, you want to start with chapter 11, and that refers to how many chapter 11s he's filed on those businesses. One of the things she pointed out was that Donald Trump, over the last 30 years, has had 35 lawsuits filed against him. And many of those lawsuits were by normal Americans and small businessmen that basically accused Mr. Trump of stiffing them and not paying them. And they believed that he did it because he knew he could, that he could fight them back. And some of the allegations that he's making against her have been debunked, not by just Democrats, but by Republicans. He said in his speech that when the Benghazi attack occurred and Mr. Stevens' life was being taken, Hillary was asleep and she wasn't available to answer the phone. But it actually happened in the afternoon, not at 3 a.m. in the morning. Another thing he accused her of is taking money from foreign nationals, from extremist groups, from the Islamic State. But he has no proof. So a couple of books came out accusing Hillary of a lot of things, but nothing's been substantiated. And when you look at her record, I mean, she's been in politics pretty much all my life. She's been in politics. And I believe somewhere along the line that it has to be some types of checks and balances against this overall corruption. And I want to make one more point. Never in politics has another candidate taken such a personal attack against another candidate. And what they're saying is the reason Donald Trump is able to do that is because he's not an established Republican. The reason he can accuse Hillary of corruption and taking money and bribes, and another candidate probably wouldn't, because I believe in politics, that's business as usual. And they don't call each other on something that they all know they practice, but they don't call it corruption when someone donates to your campaign and we have no way to check and balance where all that money goes. And I have a problem with there's no oversight in when they dump all these money into these, is there a way for them to siphon some of that money into their own, for their own personal use? And I'd digress with that.
Okay. One of the reasons why I'm so fascinated with Hillary is because she has stood the test of time. I remember in the early 70s as a high school kid, I think I was in high school or else I was in junior high school when Mondale or McGovern ran. Was it Mondale or McGovern? One of them, and she was in San Antonio with the poorest of the poor. San Antonio was 5% black, but with the poor Hispanics, poor blacks walking door to door, similar to what you saw the young people do with Obama in 2007, 2008. She was going to all of South Texas trying to get the Hispanics franchised and was just engaged as kind of like a bushy-head blonde chick that, no one ever knew was going to be famous. I remember hearing about her, but I just thought it was kind of like the burn your bra time, and everybody was kind of looking like, was being really friendly. And I've looked back at pictures now, and I remember when she was there, because it was a big deal for little San Antonio to have people coming door to door. So I've always been fascinated with her dedication. I know one of the things I want people to remember about me when I'm gone is that I cared. And that's why I'm doing this show. And I believe that people will always think that she cared, because I think my little community in San Antonio believes that she did. So I'll always be impressed with that. Donald Trump is a caricature of a person. He's an entertainer. I am concerned about the dummying down of America. And when people love someone that's talking about nothing, when they're talking about negativity, when we have a very scary world out there that requires intellectuals and people who actually care about the economy, it's unfortunate because he's rich enough to care, to say, I've made my money, now let me leave a legacy to make my country great. But I just don't think that that's where his mind is. I think we have a greedy economy. And it bothers me because on the everyday level, the poor are being cited for traffic tickets. The low-level drug dealers are going to jail. We're impoverishing and putting all these people in jail. But I see corruption everywhere, from Wall Street to the little person. No one goes after the thief on Wall Street. No one goes after the everyday. Everybody's getting over, but law enforcement gets the poor people who are getting over. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just telling you that it's scary that nobody wants to be a person to leave a legacy of doing the right thing.
Well, can I add something to the conversation, Vivian? Because everything you said was absolutely on point. But what's scary to me is how, when you said dumbing down of America, how they challenged President Barack Obama to be so perfect when he was running, and they scrutinized everything he did, everything he said. He had to be paused in every area of his life, in his character, in his pronunciation, in his enunciation. All those things they watched carefully. But with Mr. Trump being able to insult women openly, and women make up half the population, and to insult Hispanics that make up 17% of the population, with arrogance and no self-awareness that these are the very people that are going to go out and vote, it doesn't reflect to me negatively on him. To me, it points to the people that are around him that can't get him to change that message. Okay, when he say build the wall, that's fine. But when you say build the wall to keep Mexicans, and you emphasize Mexicans, who uses the term Mexicans anymore? That's not.
And I'm gonna make y'all build it. And we're still, that's the dumbing down of America. We're so dumb that that's cute to us. That's a person we want to follow. We're so dumb that somebody that insults, we built this country on civil rights and freedom of expression, but trying to do the right thing. But yet when someone says dumb, stupid stuff like he does, that's the person that gets, millions of dollars of free press. And people are watching him, and like you said, 20 people at the Washington Post are following him. How do black journalists feel? I heard there's some black journalists in town right now. What have you heard at the Black Journalists Conference?
I have not interacted with them, but I will be later on this evening. The National Newspaper Publishers Association, formerly the National Negro Publishers Association, the Black Press of America, publishers, journalists, other associated individuals are here convening for their annual convention, and Houston is very happy to have them. I'm glad you brought up the black press, because if there is going to be, the last time we had a presidential election, then Senator Obama spent $1 billion. Then former Governor Romney spent $1 billion, essentially. Much of that money went to news outlets. Very little of that money went to the black press or the Hispanic press or the Asian press. And so the question becomes, if there is less money spent in this election and there's so much free press being given to one candidate or any candidate, what does that say for the black press? What we find is that when people are planning their news buys, their advertising, they are targeting certain communities. But there is some sick understanding that when it comes to the black community, that access is free and that time is free. And so I am watching to see what happens for the black press and the few black-owned media outlets that are broadcast, commercial broadcasting outlets, to see how much of the money from Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians, and there's a Green Party candidate running as well, to see how much of that money is invested in communities of color where your votes must grow for you to win elections. You can no longer win elections with white voters in this country. It doesn't work out. And so I'm looking to see if the money moves the way the people move.
Interesting.
And so we will see about that. There's so much going on in politics right now. You know, we have House Democrats sitting in Capitol Hill. They're on the House floor now, led by our American civil rights hero, Representative John Lewis, and House Speaker Paul Ryan at this point is not budging. And we've had some real quirky things go on today.
Is that about the gun control?
That is about gun control. And C-SPAN's cameras were turned off today.
Why?
I couldn't tell you why, but capturing this on C-SPAN's cameras that are installed in the people's bicameral legislature in Washington were turned off. And C-SPAN was broadcasting live via Periscope, via an app. So we've had some incredible things go on just today.
Wow.
In democracy in America.
It's a sit-in.
I mean, I'm just saying.
We have a sit-in, we have technology.
Just think of how it appears to me that the media is controlling that. So the right-wing media or the media is not showing a sit-in?
Well, no, C-SPAN's cameras are there courtesy of the government.
So the government turned it off.
Somebody in our federal government turned them off, or are not allowing them to proceed as they proceed every other time the House chamber is empty and someone's giving a speech about, naval lint.
Well, the reason why I say that is because isn't it true that the Republicans are in charge of the House?
It is true.
So wouldn't you think that if the Republicans are in charge of the House, that the Republicans turn the cameras off when the Democrats are presenting to the world through C-SPAN a sit-in about gun control to try to turn off the interest? Because that might get some people interested in that.
Well, it was not achieved because now we have technology that allows a person with a smartphone to broadcast live from House chamber, and not only that, to have a variety of technological advances on a mobile device that can capture live action that a camera on a tripod cannot capture. So in some ways, this is giving America a more 4D understanding of what's going on rather than a 2D understanding of what's going on. It is absolutely incredible. That is, to me, the moving story of the day.
Well, the thing that's interesting is that I always find that the seniors, that's, you know, kind of my age and over, you know, the AARP crowd are the ones watching C-SPAN because they're off, they're home, you know.
I'm a C-SPAN junkie and have been since I was a teenager.
Yeah, but you're a newsie.
But
You're a news
also,
junkie, too.
C-SPAN has been invented in the time that I was a teenager as well.
Right, but I'm just, yeah, it was. And so a lot of people, it wasn't. So I'm wondering if their C-SPAN gets cut off, a lot of seniors don't have smartphones. You know, like a lot of them have just phones just to use, but not, so I'm just wondering, are
C-SPAN is still
on?
on.
It's just the sitting.
It's just that they're not using the cameras that are installed in the House chamber.
Okay.
C-SPAN is broadcasting from a app.
So
It's
someone
still
is there. So
broadcasting.
somebody's there watching it and saying and having a speaker on that's going through an app.
Yes.
But
That's
are
what it
you
has
still
taken.
seeing it or
Sure.
just hearing it?
If you watch C-SPAN, you will be seeing C-SPAN through a smartphone right now.
So, but if you have C-SPAN on your TV,
Correct.
can you see it?
You can.
Okay.
It just won't be clear
'cause
and
it's
have
too-
all the names that we call
Graphics.
supers at the bottom. It won't be clear and it won't be HD. It'll be
Gotcha.
maybe shaky. It'll be it's live from a human being with a smartphone in their hand.
Wow, like a bootleg,
Until-
like it's bootleg, but it's not.
A little bit. And speaking of our seniors, the most incredible thing about this presidential campaign this year is that I continue to be amazed that a former First Lady and former U.S. Senator, who is now a two-time grandmother, at 68 years old, will be 69 this year, and a mogul reality star who has plenty else to do, been married 3 times, has grandchildren himself, working with his children in business at 70 years old, Bernie Sanders, who has come through the civil rights movement and stood alone on many issues over the years at 74, would have the ambition and the energy at that age to say, I want the responsibility of being the leader of the free world. To
Wow.
me, that is a testament to the fact that people who want to sideline individuals because they have reached a certain age, we really need to talk about the fact that many people's lives begin in their 60s and 70s.
Amen. So
Jessica Tandy was in The Birds with Alfred Hitchcock, but she got her Oscar for playing Miss Daisy
I know
with
that's
Morgan
right.
Freeman driving her. She was 80. And so we need to really focus on what you can take positive out of this campaign, and that is what I am choosing right now. To take
Wow.
positive, that in 30 years, I can still have plenty of fire, ambition, and zest
Right.
far beyond the ambition and zest I have right now. That's amazing.
that is amazing, and that's a great situation to know that, you know, as long as we have our health and strength, we can still, you know, we might move a little slower, but we can still accomplish our goals and we can still contribute in a very meaningful way to society. Because on the flip side, we had President Obama, who started his campaign in his late 40s, because we watched him turn 50
We did.
before our eyes, and so he
In
was
his
like,
early 40s, really.
yeah, early 40s, but he was kind of like President Kennedy, because he was like the last one that we had that was
Super young.
Yeah, was super
Yeah.
young and you know, super young, where you had to even think about how old you have to be to run. You know, like 35. That's when we all learned. When I was a little girl, you had to be 35 because he was so young. So that is a good testament that we can be whatever we want to be at that age. I do think whoever wins will be taking naps. And I think that they will not be.
I like taking naps. What are you
I
talking
know,
about?
but
That's
you're not.
great.
You're not the president of the free
They
world.
can have naps.
I know, but I want them to be alert when things are going on, because as you can tell, Mr. Obama is very young in comparatively speaking, but you can see by his face and his demeanor that he has stayed up the whole 8 years he's been our president, and it has taken a toll on him. And thank God he didn't take naps, because he's had to make a lot of important decisions.
Well, he's also eating better and he stopped smoking. And there's a lot about people's lives who have been able to sustain over time that can inform ours. He supposedly stopped smoking, but we've caught him.
I'm not sure he can stop smoking. I think he slowed down.
We've caught him several times in questionable proximity to nicotine. So we don't really know, but it is said that he stopped smoking. I don't believe he has, but
he stopped the day he said he stopped, but it didn't mean he stopped the next day when you didn't ask him.
Well, there you go.
What do you got to say?
Well,
Danny?
what I find interesting about this election year is how the implosion of the Republican Party, where you have the Democrats are united, except Bernie Sanders he was running kind of like contrary to what everybody was doing on the Democratic side. But if you watch Bernie Sanders, he actually wasn't a Democrat the whole time he was on the Hill. He really was an outsider. He's always been a socialist and stood for social change. But on the Republican side, I've watched over the years them build this message that if you listen to all the right-wing talk show, radio talking heads, all the message was just the same.
Yep.
But when Donald Trump came on the scene, they started picking sides.
Because they can't control him, because he's not following the script. They have a script, and they are fantastic at following it. But I believe that Mr. Trump is going to fall in line because he doesn't want to be defeated at their convention, because they're starting little rumblings at their convention. So I think that he wants to fall in line. I think he'll fall in line, actually. But I think he's a loose cannon. I think if he wins, he's going to do what the heck he wants to do within reason. Keeping in mind, viewers, that Congress is the one who makes our laws, and the Senate ratifies them, and the president vetoes. So let's not leave this show thinking that the president writes our laws and that the president can do something single-handedly. He's our top representative, but I think that he will wield a lot of power. And let me just say this: I'm frustrated, and I hope you out there who are watching are frustrated with Republicans being able to just say no to everything, the party of no. I implore you, I beg you to vote, and vote for people who do more than just say no. Who can go to work every day and spend hundreds of thousands, millions of our taxpayer dollars for our House of Representatives to go and say no? Who has a job where all you have to do is say no? No, I hate them, or I don't like them, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. I like a baby. I mean, I was telling a friend the other day, when you go to foreign countries, you're lucky enough to travel, America's like a teenager, a spoiled teenager that's stuck on no, I'm not doing that. No, I mean, we worry about who's screwing who, which is not our business, because we spent 3 years of Clinton on who he was screwing. They would never do that in Europe. Europe is too mature for that. Europe is us, 200 years later. You know what I mean?
We have heads of state in Europe who have known mistresses.
But that's not relevant because they're past that. Hundreds of years past that. And so because they're concerned about their economy, their quality of life, and their peace. I mean, people in other countries are not as stressed as we are. They don't seem to be. They seem like they can still walk and go buy bread every day, and they can walk in the park, even though they work, but we're like hateful, mean girls. That's how America acts about everything. I mean, we're angry about everything. And I know it's an over-characterization, but I want to say that just to say, let's take a chill pill. Let's kind of calm down. Let's not be so jealous. Let's not be so mean to other people. Let's respect people in other parties. And whoever wins, let's all work together to make America a better place, to make Houston a better place, to make the county a better place, instead of acting just mean and saying no and being so hateful. I'm just so tired of the mean girl syndrome.
Well, can I point out something that's really at stake in this race? One of the biggest things that's stated in this race who win is who's going to control the country for the next 4 years. What the Republicans hope to happen is, the reason it's so important for them to win is, we're going to be nominating Supreme Court justices.
At least two.
At least two. And if,
Maybe 3. Well, it's
As
going to be
many
3.
as 5.
Right, because it's actually 1 now that they won't vote on because they're the party of what?
No.
No. Okay,
There's
so then
the Scalia seat.
Yeah, and so then there's
Thomas saying he wants to retire.
Ginsburg. She's too old now.
I'm not going to say, we just talked about being fabulous at 80.
But she's 82, and I just think
We just talked about being fabulous
they
at
said that
80.
she's having some health issues.
Well, I think that there are
An
several of
attention
them that
deficit.
have some health issues.
An attention deficit. I mean, that's reading and listening all day takes some skill. I
they
mean,
didn't stop Ronald Reagan from
And
being
then
president.
Kennedy is going to be 80 very soon. That's 4. And you never know who will say, I've done this long enough and I need to go, because Clarence Thomas is one of those individuals who is rumored to want to
Do
get
something else with his life.
and the thing is,
get in that RV with his wife and go
Yeah.
longer across the country than they can go in the summer.
and the thing is, I've been told, even with the 80 and 82-year-olds, and I'm saying attention deficit, I just also mean that. If you're still as healthy as they are with the best care in the world at 82, wouldn't you enjoy being with your great-grandkids or your grandkids or your friends?
Maybe not. Maybe you are so devoted to your vocation and so energized by it that you don't want to leave.
I think it's the perks and the prestige of the title,
there's
not
that.
the actual work.
But I wanted to say that one of the things that has been written about over and over again regarding Mr. Trump's run is that he is indicative of the Republican strategy in the South over the last 4 decades at
Right.
least. And he is also indicative of you calling it a dumbing down of America, but it's the way it's been described by people who are making analysis of his behavior is authoritarianism. And that
That's an
we
interesting point.
as Americans want someone to tell us what to do. And that has a lot of linkages and tentacles to patriarchy. That has a lot of linkages and tentacles to the people who have the money must be doing something right, and the people who don't have the money must be doing something wrong. The loudest person in the room is right, and the meek person shall not inherit the earth, 2 Corinthians. So,
Right, right.
2 Corinthians. So,
Right.
the world has turned upside down, and
Yeah.
for a lot of millennials, what they were taught would work is not working. They were taught stay out of trouble, don't have any children before you're married,
an
or
education,
get
get a
an
degree.
education, and they find themselves in the bedroom they grew up in, sleeping on Smurf sheets,
Staying with their mama.
having to abide by the rules of their parents who can't retire because they don't know what's going to happen to them, and they don't
And
have
they have $100,000 worth of debt, let's say.
and the average age of marriage for women and men is inching up steadily. And we have people delaying home buying. We have people who are 30 years old and their parents are still paying their cell phone bill. We just have all this going on. So we just have a world that has turned upside down. And we have this presidential campaign that is like nothing we've ever seen before. And there are so many things to be excited about. You know, the zest for life for these people and their, 4 score.
But let's talk about that authoritarian. So break
Yes.
that down to people who might not. I know what that is from college, but tell people what authoritarian style of government could entail for us. Break it down.
It's one of the reasons why people will describe Mr. Trump as a person who wants to reign and not govern, a king and not a president. People have described Secretary Clinton as someone who wants to be a queen and not a president. I will say this is not a person who is unaccustomed to living in the White House. She's got that T-shirt. She's been there, done that.
Right.
So that can't be it. The White House is probably the smallest house Mr. Trump has ever resided in.
Talk to me.
So I'm not sure.
It's
he's
definitely not a
excited.
penthouse
It's not a penthouse, and so
in a building that he owns.
right. But authoritarianism has a lot to do with people wanting to be told what to do, what to think.
But they
how
do have to
behave.
respect the person who's telling them, because if Obama said something, then the party of no said attack, you're wrong, I hate you, no. But with Mr. Trump, everybody is waiting on his next crazy thing that he's going to say, like an entertainer.
But this is America, and America has a history. America, yes, if you want to talk about the United States, you can talk about wanting to escape religious persecution. You can talk about wanting to start a new type of government of the people and for the people and all that. But we know that this country was birthed in a way that gave no enfranchisement to anyone at this table. And we know that America was birthed in a way that affirms capitalism, that affirms a lot of things that Mr. Trump embodies. And so if you subscribe to authoritarianism, even people who don't even realize that they do. I know a lot of people who, if I walk in a room, I'm a short woman of color, and a tall white man walks in the room, they will assume that he has more authority, power, prestige, ability than me. And they don't even realize that they're doing that. And so Mr. Trump—
Black or white.
Or white.
Black or white
or
people
Hispanic
do it.
or
Hispanic.
Asian.
Everybody
or
does
immigrant
it.
or natural born or whatever. And so Mr. Trump is a relatively tall, white, older man of means. He is definitely in the 1%. And for a lot of
and he
people—
exudes it when he walks into the room.
Maybe. To some people he might. But what I'm saying is we live in a country that affirms that as the person in charge, the person taking the lead. And so if you are going to subscribe to authoritarianism, regardless of whether you consciously do it or subconsciously do it, that it's just like the person that rides up in the bicycle and the person that rides up in the Benz. We have, well, or the BMW. We have an idea of who is making it, who is better, who is doing well. And it may be that the person riding up on the bicycle is a person who doesn't want to pollute the environment and could buy 10 Benzes. But that's their choice. So we do a lot of assuming, and a lot of people have assumed because a person can run businesses, maybe well, maybe not well, that they are qualified to run a country and that they are qualified to run a nation. Or even the assumptions made about Secretary Clinton, that because she has served in a cabinet, that because she has been a first lady, because she has seen the presidency up close, those are credentials that make her better equipped. But those are experiences that she has had that make her far afield of most human beings on the planet. So it's interesting that the assumptions that are made about what it takes to govern well and what these two candidates bring to the table.
I don't think we focus enough as Americans on who would be a better leader and who would Congress follow. You know, I think we need to think about that a little bit more. But because we're getting on with our time, let's switch to another current event, and let that be the Florida Massacre. I know we were all brought to our knees once again by someone being so selfish, that is so full of self-hate, that instead of just committing suicide, he had to take everybody with him that he could, hundreds of people with him, and then do suicide by cop. Because you know when you go into a place as a lone gunman, you're going to get killed. So obviously you want to die. But the selfishness to take all these other people with them is out of control. And I heard someone say the other day, there's nothing sacred anymore. We can't be in church, at Bible study with a lot of old black people who are defenseless and loving. We can't be at the movie theater. As little kids, we couldn't be at the drive-in in many, many years, which was a fun experience if anybody ever got to experience that. But that became unsafe in the late 70s. Or in the 70s. So we can't be in church. We can't go to Bible study. Now we can't go, I mean, a gay club, LGBT club, is a sanctuary for the LGBT community as far back as I can remember. With Numbers downtown in Houston, with the old bathhouses. I mean, you could go and be yourself in even Studio 54 in New York. You know, everybody could go. I mean, we were raised, of our generation was raised with people being able to go to their own sanctuaries. Black people could go to their clubs. The Hispanics could go to their clubs. The ones who like Zydeco could go to their clubs. It's their sanctuary.
100 years ago, speakeasies in Harlem
Yes.
were places for artists, for people who did not fit into the binary male or female.
Right.
The queer community was populating speakeasies.
Right.
So it's
poets
unfortunate.
and people who were bisexual, and people have always had their sanctuaries And the good thing about America, and even in Houston and cities and counties, we respected that. You know, you go to your place, close the door, it's your business. And everybody respected that. And here we are with this. And I know that, Danny, you have something you want to talk about that you've read up on. So why don't
Yeah,
you do that?
I mean, you know, one of the things about this, one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history is it created the gun debate all over again. And it's a real heated thing, and it's just about the type of weapon he's using. He's using an AR-15, which if he didn't have access to they call it a long gun, the ability to shoot multiple rounds, and you're able to reload and keep shooting, or you can have a 60-round magazine, that if he didn't have access to this type of weapon, then of course a building with 350 people is not going to let one guy with one gun with 9 bullets kill 50 people. But I don't know if that's the big issue, because it turned into a hate crime, to a terrorist, to a lone wolf, did this guy just have a mental problem? When you look at it, he's been married twice, and that he grew up American. He didn't grow up in Afghanistan or any of these what they call Islamic states. He grew up right here just like a normal American. He went to high school. He got married. He followed all the American values. But I believe, he was influenced by his own demons and social media, and to want to kind of like go out to validate himself. And I believe personally, when he attached himself to these hate groups, that he had really no direct contact with them, but that would make him more infamous if he stated that he was doing this in the name of ISIL or ISIS. But the response from the government, from the Christian community, from just normal people has been mixed. And it's almost been an uncomfortable conversation about the group of people, and they call it identity politics, where you don't look at the person as an American, you look at their identity. Like, you're not an American, you're a part of the LGBT, and I don't get a chance to use that term often enough to even know it, but that community. So when I talk to my Christian brothers and I ask them for their opinion, of course, I stay on message like, look, we've progressed to the point to where everybody's validated. When I saw President Obama make that big, huge pivot, and I saw that he didn't really want to do it, but why he bases his support of that community, and he based it on civil rights movement. And it clearly stated that the same way that we fought for our rights, they're using that same blueprint. And I couldn't do anything but agree with them. They're just standing up for their civil rights, to not to be judged by the color of their skin, their sexual orientation. And so I had to kind of like move past the old way of bigotry and separate. Because I grew up, Vivian, where it was real unacceptable in my community of other groups of people. And I don't use the gay community as an example. I'll use special needs children. If someone had a problem, instead of us saying that they had special needs, what was the term we used?
Retarded.
Now you can't even use that word. And I couldn't understand why the media highlighted that the club was, why was it so important for them to emphasize the term that it wasn't just a club, it was a gay club? How did that make it a difference? These people were killed. Their sexual orientation, I couldn't understand why it played such a huge part in the media's message, that they had to hammer down that these people wasn't just regular Americans, which it should have been. Anyone that kills an American, that's horrible. Not because of their identity. It's like when they went into the church and killed the people that was doing Bible study. These are Christians, right? But it wasn't, I guess you see my point.
Well, see, I disagree because Charleston was about a black church.
Okay.
The media makes identification sometimes for no reason at all, just because the people are different from the people reporting. Other times the identifications are made to give you a context for the people that we're reporting about. When you say a Southern black church, that creates a context for terror. This country has a history of torching churches, killing people in churches, targeting the black church as the highest of sanctuaries for African people in America. So I think that contextualizes, and you're going to see some mores and customs springing from the Charleston massacre that are going to directly take you back to Richard Allen and the AME Church and more than 150 years. So I think it contextualizes. One of the things that I discussed with my mother, who lives in Florida, immediately after we woke up that Sunday and figured out what all had happened and the 50 people, 20 had gone to 50, we often talk about how there are certain things that are going to be reported differently than they would have been when I was born. And so one thing that's interesting is I said to her, I said, you know, there are people that are going to have to explain that their partner was killed too, or their partner was killed, or that people did not know that they had a life, that their loved one, their significant other, was not in a heterosexual context, but was in a homosexual context. And so there are going to be some things revealed just because of where it was and who was there that maybe, and we found that half of the deceased were Hispanic. We saw a language barrier with the families that had to be intervened. We saw some cultural issues. We saw some outright denial that my child was not there because they were gay, and later the families had to come to terms that their child had not shared with them that they were gay. And so it is amazing. I think it's okay to contextualize because it tells you where we're about to go with this. So it makes it important that the gay city council member is the one in Orlando speaking over this because they have some understanding of what this club meant for a certain community. So I didn't have a problem with that at all. I needed to know that because I know that the history, and there's a history of terror on people who are LGBT and queer. There is a history of attack. So when people talk about, you know, bathrooms, everybody has to pee. I don't know what these people think. You know, I don't know why that's even an issue. In Europe, people just go to the bathroom. Right. In Africa, in many parts of the third world, the developing world, there is a hole and you squat. There's no M or no F. So I'm a bit amused by some of this stuff, honestly.
Let me get some of this too, Cindy. Let me just say, for me, I agree with you, Cindy. I disagree with you, Danny, on this. and let me tell you why. Because I'm like you, Cindy. I can't say it as eloquently as Cindy, but I think people need to know who is being terrorized. I mean, I think that I have a lot of people that I care about in the LGBT community. And I think the LGBT community needs to know that people will target them, just like we know now in a black church will be targeted. And I think that it created a positive conversation because if you knew that club was being targeted, then if you had a loved one that you knew might have been in the closet or might be LGBT, you knew to be concerned to see if they were there. Because remember, it took about a week to identify all those bodies because people didn't know that their family members were in that club or that were gay or that could have frequented that club. Then other people who were their lovers did know. But I think that we need to know, and if you're going to tell the news, everybody wants to know the motive. And so by saying LGBT, it made, once people heard that, then everybody came out of the woodwork. His first wife, his lover, I've heard now.
His father was the first one out the gate.
Right.
And said, well, my son wasn't gay.
Right.
That was the first denier.
Right.
Of, now he was there, he was shooting gay folks in the gay club, but my son's not gay. And look at his wife. And he got another wife, he got two wives.
Right,
you know,
right. And now what do we find out today?
Who cared about him? And who cared
But you
about
could tell
what he
that
might have
that
been?
father knew that his son might have had some homosexual tendencies by how defiant he was
to bring that up.
bring up that. But then we're finding out now, I was told, Danny, didn't you tell me, or someone said today that in the news that the shooter actually had, and you know, I don't want to glorify him, so I'm not going to say his name ever, but the shooter, the killer, the murderer had a lover, a gay lover.
He did, and I don't know if the FBI has interviewed him, but
The FBI has confirmed that they interviewed
Yeah,
this
they
man.
won't even
Okay.
say the
He
name
is the
unless they confirm
purported
it.
lover of the shooter.
and he said that this is what his lover alleges, that he had a sexual relationship with a Puerto Rican guy, and believed that this guy was HIV positive, and it made
So let me make sure I understand. So the shooter had the sexual relationship with the Puerto Rican, or the shooter's lover had the relationship with the Puerto
the
Rican?
shooter was acting on revenge after being with a Puerto Rican man who later learned he was HIV positive. So his hate, as according to Miguel, for gay Puerto Ricans and for all the stuff he did to him, I believe this crazy, horrible thing he did was for revenge. But he's saying he believes that. And it's no one has been able to, when he's on a 911 call, he never says, I'm killing in the name of Islam, all these terms he used, and I'm killing these people specifically because of their sexual orientation. He was just saying he was doing it for the bombings and the attacks that we're doing in Syria, and that we need to stop doing that. So so the conversation goes back and forth, the argument goes back and forth, is his motive.
But to say that he's doing it in connection with a global
Makes him a hero.
mindset, it makes him a martyr.
A
It
martyr
makes him bigger.
instead of
I
what
agree.
instead
To
of the
say
pain that he
you're-
really is.
To
Yeah.
say
I'm
that
gay,
you're doing it
yeah.
in retaliation to a man that you didn't even acknowledge, to a sexual relationship you would not acknowledge, for something that is outside the covenant that you had with the second wife, is so small that it makes you small. To say that you're doing it in association with the Islamic
Allah.
State makes you big. And so he cannot be believed, whether you go back and see what he said, the shooter. And this person may be giving us some very solid insight. He certainly was credible enough to the FBI to come find him to see what they could determine about
And
what
just
he
think,
said.
I mean, just look at what he did. He was like, he took a gun and just shooting innocent people. I mean, that is the most hateful thing that you can do for no reason. Because if you're doing it in the name of Allah, you don't have to go to a known LGBT club that you've gone to before.
Oh, wouldn't
Go
you be
fight
so
a war.
careful
Go fight
to
a
pick
war.
out the gay Puerto Ricans?
Right.
He killed teenage black girls. He killed mothers who were not even male. He killed all kinds of folks. So you're just dead by association?
So what do we agree on? This is what I'm trying to understand. What do we agree on his motive was?
We don't
based
know
on
his
the
motive.
media's message.
We don't know his motive, and that's the whole reason for the conversation, and that's why we need to know where it is, LGBT. What I learned from this is that we have a lot of people with unresolved issues. We have a lot of people who are hurting, who are suicidal, and in today's society, I just see more suicidal people committing homicides before the suicide.
Disregard for human life
Just a
and their
disregard.
So more of a mental health issue?
Yes, it's
own.
obviously.
Baseline.
Yeah.
Mental
Because if
health
you want
can
to
just-
fight for someone, you go there and fight. You don't sit here with a wife and a child and two wives in the comfort of home. If you want to go fight, then you go, like we found a lot of Americans going over there to try to fight with ISIL. You don't come here and you just say, I'm mad today, and let me pick a cause to die for as a martyr because you're fighting and wanting to kill your demons inside of you. He obviously is having an internal tug of war.
Well, and he's such a gladiator, he has to go home and beat up on the first wife.
Right.
I mean, you know,
She had to
we're
be
talking,
rescued.
right, we're talking about a person who is very, very small. We're talking about a person who worked in security in multiple capacities, to have some brushing up against law enforcement, but not the responsibility of a peace officer. We're talking about somebody who was calculating in the way that he operated in society to make himself look like a person of authority, but having very little authority and being such a gladiator that he had to walk around with a gun or a nightstick or a security
And beat up his
uniform
first wife, who was
and then
beautiful.
go home
He was
and put
probably
his hands
on
on
his
a
wife.
person in your household. That is
And did you
despicable.
see her? She was beautiful. So to me, that's
I
like,
don't care if she looked like Quasimodo.
No.
You don't put your hands on anyone.
I know, and that's not the point I want to make, but I appreciate yours. The point I'm trying to make is sometimes when you're gay and she's beautiful, he might have been jealous of her beauty.
He could have been.
Because, you know what I'm saying?
We got
So it's
people
a lot of-
competing in marriages on many levels.
That's
Looks,
what I'm saying.
careers,
That's
money.
what I'm saying.
So, I
No,
mean,
he was a handsome man too, but I'm just saying sometimes you want to be somebody, some of the people that you're around. And so, because why do her like that? But it's from what we've read.
he's a small human being.
Small human being. But look, he's carrying guns, but he's too trifling to become a real peace officer. He's
Well, maybe.
too trifling to go across. I mean, I'm just saying, but why don't you?
You may be investigated for some of the things that you're doing that would disqualify you from becoming a peace officer. And he was doing some things that made him get interviewed by federal authorities.
Twice.
And so that would not bode well on the application. I don't care if you're applying to Headwood Village Police Department or NYPD. Right. They're going to look at those things and they won't bode well for you. One more political issue, though, before we go.
have 1 minute, so you can end it with.
Really?
On Saturday, we're out of time. On Saturday, the precinct chairs in Harris County Commission Precinct 1 will be making their selection among those who have requested their votes for the seat of the late L. Franco Lee on the Harris County Commission. And it will be interesting to see what those individuals who are precinct chairs decide. And it also means that when you go to vote, whether it's for dog catcher or a precinct chair or a justice of the peace or the president of the United States, those votes have consequences. And for everybody who thought it didn't matter who their precinct judge was, well, we know in Harris County and we know in Texas this week, it does matter who your precinct judge is.
All right, Cindy, and that's a very important issue in Harris County because L. Franco Lee had that job for what, about 30
years?
30 years. And so the next person might have it for 30 years. And our precinct chairs decide because he died while being the only candidate running for Harris County Commissioner Precinct 1. And it's my understanding that it's more than 100 precinct chairs that have to vote.
125.
125 have to vote for the precinct chair. And there are a lot of names in the running. So I think next week this time we'll know, won't we?
We will, because nobody filed in the Republican column and no other Democrat filed to run against Commissioner Lee. And so the other lesson is, if you want to run, run.
Run, put your name
You never know what will happen, and you never know what will put you in position to be the top choice.
That's true. All right, Danny, do you want to close out with
Yes, I want to make a pitch for the Path to Freedom prison ministry. The Lazarus Project is it's a reentry support group, peer support group, and spiritual empowerment group that serves returning citizens, formerly incarcerated men and women returning from jails or prison. Our mission is to inspire men and women to overcome the destructive forces of recidivism, and we do that with sharing faith, love, and hope. And we want to thank Vivian King for our partnership with that ministry. And we're located 2019 Crawford Street, Houston, Texas, at St. John's downtown. Minister
Rudy
Ramos and Juanita.
Yes.
Yep.
Ramos.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully we've enlightened you, we've educated you about some current events in the national politics and in local politics. Thank you for watching, and we'll be telling another story next week. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Good night. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news.